Hi, everybody. Welcome to my podcast, Get Into It with Gila. I'm Gila Glassberg, and today I have Shifra Rabinowitz. Hi, Shifra.
Hi, Gila. Thank you so much for having me on.
Thank you so much for joining us. Please tell the listeners, I like to say, where do you live and what do you do? So where do you live now?
I live in Philadelphia, and
Cool.
I'm a mental health counselor, and I work actually in New York, although remotely out of New York. And I also work for a private practice in Philadelphia that specializes in maternal mental health. So miscarriages, stillbirth, infertility, perinatal mood disorders like postpartum anxiety, depression, and psychosis.
Wow. That's a lot of things. So wait, you have two part-time jobs or one's full-time, one's part-time?
I have one full-time job. I have one part-time job. I need to have a lot of balls in the air because I just really enjoy doing that. I'm also in school. I'm working out full-time in school, getting my MBA. So just
Wow.
a lot of things.
Your MBA?
Yes.
Wow. And also sleep stuff or no?
Yes. So I do like a little bit of like behavioral sleep coaching. That's very much a side project with help people who are dealing with insomnia to be able to not to deal with insomnia, really to give strategies and tools for and working with insomnia in a holistic and natural way.
Very cool. Okay,
I would also like to say that I'm a childhood friend of Gila Glassberg and have been
yes.
following her for a long time. Yes.
Yeah, so I'll just say that we know each other from Scranton. I'm from Scranton. You're from Wilkes-Barre. And my mom and your dad worked together. And then we
Yes.
were all of a sudden, like 10 years later, we're in, or I don't know, 20 years later, we're in like a book club. And we know each other. And I did not know your last name. So that was really funny. It's a small world.
It is a
Um,
small world.
Yeah, but it sounds like you're doing so many like amazing things. So tell us did you always want to be a mental health counselor? Like how did that start?
Totally not. I really fell into it out of lack of interest in like really trying to. I guess I would say like really laziness. That's really the word I'm looking for. I think when I was in school, or when I was, I got my undergrad degree in psychology, and I really enjoyed it. It felt very intuitive to me, but there wasn't like a thing I wanted to do. There wasn't like, here's a person I want to be like, or here's what I want to do. So I applied to a few graduate schools, and I ended up going to one that was a 5-minute drive from my house, which is why I say laziness, because it was like right there. And I was like, okay, I'll get a master's degree in mental health counseling. And then like I'll probably save the world in some way or the other.
Mm-hmm.
And then as I got into it, really I went with, I was a couple years out of school and really working. I was working with teens, at-risk teens, working for Project Extreme, so doing a lot of work with survivors of trauma and addiction, and really
Wow.
just fell in love with the work that I was doing. So I do
Wow.
a lot of different things, but I also find that I keep coming back to working with women across the lifespan who are really, looking for change, inspiration, motivation, and just really to become the best version of themselves.
Well, so you're saying there's a parallel between like kids at risk and women lifestyle, women throughout
So yeah, I mean,
yeah,
yeah,
women
I
throughout their
think
lifespan.
people, right. I'm true of men also, but I just find that I gravitate more towards working with women.
Right.
Um, yeah, I think that I find that in all the things that I've done, I have a lot of different experiences. It really comes back to helping people be the best version of themselves. So it's yes, I do a lot of work with adults, young like adolescents and young adults and adults.
Wow. 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 That's a lot. And the like addiction training, like that was like a specialty, like you had to go for more training for that, or you just sort of
It was
find
something
that.
that I fell into. Now that I'm thinking about a lot of things I fell into, or really was gifted opportunities. I think that I'm a person who looks for opportunities, looks for reasons to say yes to things rather than no. So I like do things that I like don't feel qualified for, and then learn how to do them as I go.
Mm-hmm.
So I was offered a job working in running a shelter for young adults for Project Extreme, which is based in Far Rockaway and in the 5 towns. So I took on this job as running the shelter, and I thought it was going to be just a lot more administrative, and it really was a lot of hands-on coaching and mentoring and working one-on-one with these women who were just really, really extraordinary population, wonderful people to work with. And I just found that the more that I learned about addiction, it wasn't about addiction. It was really about understanding the person, or just seeing a
Mm-hmm.
person really as they are, and both as they are right this minute and as they're going to be in the future.
Right. 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 I guess that's like the whole holistic approach also with sleeping, right? Like it's not just like one thing is causing somebody not to sleep. It's like you have to know the whole person, the whole picture.
Right. Systems, yeah. I
Right.
think I like always wished there was like, just take a pill, just do like this one thing and boom, all your problems are solved. But I think that the more I see just how everything is interconnected and everything works in systems, just the more broader of a perspective that I need to take, which is
Right.
something I'm grateful for. Right.
And then how did you get interested in women's health? Did that also just fall in your lap or?
No, not, I don't think so. I think when I was in high school, I started reading. I love to read and I read
Right.
very quickly. So
You
yeah,
were always reading. Right.
yes.
I
And
remember
I
that.
read very quickly. So I would go through themes of like books that I was interested in. Um, so I think I started when I was in high school. I remember reading a lot of books about um, like the media's impact on women and girls growing up in culture. That's I'm trying to like remember like the titles of books that I read, but I don't. But it was those themes about a lot about eating disorders and a lot about just the way that women in particular and children are affected by growing up in the culture that we do, and that really sparked my interest in just understanding how women work and wanting to undo some of that.
Mhm. So like diet culture, basically.
I didn't know that's what it was called then. I
Right.
think I only learned that 15 years later, and I was like,
Right.
look at that. Yeah,
Right.
but
I was gonna say
is
you were
definitely
like a little bit before your time because that's like now all right, like all over the media, but you like were already picking up on that.
right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I didn't think about it like that, but yeah,
Yeah.
that's really where my head was at
What
15,
was
16.
so I know we were talking about this before we started recording, but how did you hear about intuitive eating or how did that come into your life?
I'm trying to remember the first time I heard that term. Um, I read a lot of books, I think also as I was going through like a food, like understanding, oh my gosh, I'm forgetting obviously all the names of the books, but there's a book called Mindless Eating. There's a book, Salt, Sugar, Fat. Is that what it's called? Like all the
Salt,
books, like
sugar, acid, fat, that one?
there's a few of them with similar names, just books about like the way that um, what's put into food to make us addicted to them. Those
Mm-hmm.
types of book, and I was just
Mm-hmm.
and I forgive the pun, devoured them. Just was so fascinated by what was happening. So I think I had a framework for what was happening before I learned that term. But I think I learned the term intuitive eating as an adult probably in the last 5 years, 6, 7 years, something like that, I would say.
Was like did you struggle with your relationship to food and your body image and stuff, or this was more like educational, like you were fascinated by the topic?
I think a combination. I think I don't have any unusual struggles in body image, or something like an eating disorder. But I think just in like in a standard way of comparison and um, yeah, just being unhappy because like the messages that I was getting from the media and just the implicit the like the covert messages that I was getting about what beauty looks like, it was more like just it was subtle. So I think it was both educational and recognizing my own, that this is happening in me also. This isn't just, oh, this happens to other people, this is also me.
Right.
So it was a
Like you
combination.
internalized it and you didn't realize even.
Yes,
Right.
internalize, and I didn't realize it. Yes.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel very fortunate that I even began on this journey as a kid, because by the
Right.
time I got just working deep in this field, knee deep in this field, and working with women, and so much about body images, so much about what beauty is, I was just like, oh, like I have so much that was just primed in me from from so many years ago, but
Right.
how to navigate this. So I
Right.
think what I learned about intuitive eating, it was like like it just all clicked into place.
Mm-hmm.
It was like this makes sense.
Right. Right. So you like were you just like doing research on like body image or diet culture and you stumbled upon it, or like a colleague told you about it? Like how'd you find it?
I think the first time I really remember understanding that to be mindful when eating is a choice. It's not like a thing that doesn't happen. I just remember when I was um, little, probably like 8 or 9, my mother took me to get tested for lactose intolerant because every time I would eat macaroni and cheese, I would get sick.
Mm-hmm.
But later, after like a couple of doctors later, she realized that I was just eating so much of it because I just loved it, and like
Right.
could probably now like eat an entire pot of macaroni and cheese just because I love it.
Right.
And
It's
like
delicious. Yeah.
have no, it's amazing, and it just
Right.
makes me brings such joy to my life.
Right.
But like that idea of being intuitive would have, like, it was just not there. So the first time I really remember just hearing that is something you could, like, that's an active thing you can do. I was reading a book by Janine Roth.
Yeah.
It's called Women, Food, and God. I remember nothing from that book other than just her describing and it's about the spiritual just connection, I think, between, not as a spiritual connection, but like the relation people have with whatever experience they have of a God or a higher power and food and the way it ties intrinsically with women. So I'm not recommending it because I don't remember what it was about.
Oh.
So it may or may not be quality material.
Okay.
But she does describe a process. It's like a 10-step process for eating and like getting in line with your food.
Mm-hmm.
It was probably about weight loss.
Right.
Maybe
Probably.
maybe no, I don't remember.
Most books are, yeah.
Most books are.
Yeah.
But really just talked about just all like the basic things about eating mindfully and slowing down and smelling it and listening, the difference between your head and your stomach, and how most people listen to their tongues. Our tongues tell us when to stop when we want to feel like we want to die.
Right.
And if you listen to your actual stomach, you know much earlier. And I remember trying it and my mind was just blown that it was just such a different experience, because my mouth was like, eat more.
Right.
My stomach was like, I'm good, I'm satiated.
Right.
And I would love to say, why, yes, I have done that forever and ever since, but obviously that's not, nothing so linear.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I will just say, just because you said that, for listeners, I really do believe that most people think that is intuitive eating. They think like, okay, now I'm intuitive, and like every time I eat, I'm gonna be like, am I hungry? Am I full? Does it satisfy me? And I'm like, oh goodness, like that's like a snapshot of our session, right? But like in reality, your kid's screaming, the milk is spilled, you just got home from work, your head's hurting, and you're starving because you didn't eat all day, your self-care is lacking, you didn't sleep the night before, and there's chocolate cake on the table. So like,
oh my gosh, you were describing like you are in my head. That has happened to me so many times.
Right, exactly. So I think that's like the nuance part, and that's like the realism, like the humanness of this.
When you say like, I deserve it, in an angry voice, like, I deserve this cake, like that's
right.
Slow down here.
Also, like another really cool thing about intuitive eating is that, like, I mean, I don't know, have you ever heard Evelyn Tripoli talk? One of the authors of Intuitive Eating. She's so like, she's just like a very special person, and like I took the training with her, and like I still listen to her recordings. And she's just so gentle. Like she's like, okay, you binge, like you felt out of control, like what could you learn from that? Like what could we glean from that? Or like what do we know better for next time? You know, like so like gentle, as opposed to like, ugh, you binged again, like blame and shame, and it's so heavy, and it's so like not motivating at all in any way.
Totally not.
You know?
Right. I just heard it pouring right outside my window. I don't know if it's like bothers the audio at all. Okay.
No, it's great.
Yeah, and I think also one thing that I remember having I don't know when it was, but there was a very clear light bulb moment that you can either do fun things with your life, or you can think about food. Like you can't do both. Like, meaning like you can either be in pictures and go to the beach and jump out of airplanes and ride horse, like all the other fun things, like trap, like all the things that I want to do with my life, or I can be thinking about how I look and how I compare and what do I feeling fat and looking. I just remember thinking like, you can either do this or you can do that, and I don't want to do that. I do not want to be spending my life thinking about my body, because there's so many other things that I want to do with my life, and you can't do both.
Right.
So I think that was the most powerful takeaway, I guess, just of my intuitive eating journey so far, which is just pick one.
Right.
And I picked the one that involves cake and jumping out of planes.
Well, did you jump out of a plane?
I did.
Did you really?
I did. It was okay. It was a lot of fun, but it also made me really nauseous. Yeah. Because you go up in this tiny little plane.
Right.
And so that made me nauseous, but the actual jumping down was amazing.
Okay, so detour for a second. Why did you decide to jump out of a plane?
Because I can. Right. Really, is the answer to the question. So it was really, I mean, the how I ended up going ahead as someone that I was working with, someone that I was mentoring, had reached a milestone in her own recovery. And I was like, what do you want to do? She's like, I want to jump out of a plane. I was like, amazing. I think maybe it was even something that I had suggested, like, what do you want to do? Do you want to go shopping? Do you want to jump out of a plane? She was like, that one. And she's like, will you come with me? And I was like, it's like, do I really want to spend the money on this? Like, this is not a cheap activity. Do I really want? Like, yeah, no, I do. Like, this is a thing I want to do in my life.
So it was a money thing. You weren't like afraid of like going up in a plane and jumping out of it. I don't know. Okay, fine.
No. I'm afraid of needles. I'm not afraid of jumping out of a plane.
Okay, that's normal. I'm like afraid of everything. Like my husband always makes fun of me that like I'm literally afraid of all things. So yeah, that's pretty scary. But I would do that. I would do that. Like
Okay.
it's probably super exhilarating if you want to go with me.
Yeah, I'd be happy to go with you. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Okay, so let's go back to intuitive eating. Um, so basically, do you use that? Like, do you feel like you use that in your practice? Like, do you feel like it's something like the principles come up when you're working with women?
All the time. There are so many things that don't start out about food or about body image, but end up becoming about or taking a detour into food and body image and the way we feel. And it's something that I bring up. I have to like restrain myself from like, here's intuitive eating. It's amazing. Watch all these videos,
Right,
read all
right.
these books, speak to all these people. So it just
Right. Yeah. Actually, I find myself saying that a lot when a client saying something, or even like a potential client, I'm like, did you read the book? Like there's so much in there, but like, and it's actually interesting also to note that like so many people feel shame about it. They're like, how do you read? Like, how do you have time to read? Like, how do you get yourself to read a book like that? And I'm like, right. Some people don't like to read. Some people want me to tell them in session, and I feel like I'm a broken record repeating myself over and over again, but they actually need that. They actually need me to repeat myself. And also like I read the book and I talk about it all the time. So I'm familiar with it, but like remembering that like it's okay to learn in a different way or to experience something in a different way.
And I think it's so cool that you have a podcast where you can talk about the same thing with different angles every time you do this.
Right.
Which is really amazing.
Right.
Yeah. So it is something that comes up frequently. And it comes up oftentimes just everywhere. It comes up when we're talking about dating. It comes up shalom bias. It comes up children, just everywhere. Work.
Are there ways that it comes up that like surprise you? Like, oh, I didn't see that one coming, or like for me, I see like I feel like really comfortable. Like people talk a lot about like marital intimacy, right? And I was like, like in the beginning, I was like, I don't know, like obviously I'm not trained at all, but like as it started coming up more and more in sessions, I'm like, yeah, this makes sense. Like this makes so much sense that this would be like such a big overlap, like they should feel comfortable to talk to someone about that.
Yeah, it certainly comes up in intimacy. It certainly comes up in the relationship. I think I would need like a whole another podcast to like explain, but just like in the relationship with the self in particular, especially if we're coming from a culture where a person is not, who gets married and they don't have an experience of intimacy in a real way. They don't have necessarily an experience of like, just being under, even by themselves. How many women in our community just don't actually know what their bodies fully look like because they've just never been fully, or it just isn't. So I think it comes up like a whole lot with when I say the intimate relationship with the self, I mean like just getting to know a self in a whole different way. And physical intimacy with another person is just one element of that.
Yeah.
So that is a way that it surprised me. That I was like, this shouldn't surprise me.
Right.
I think it's because confidence is everywhere.
Right. Or like I interviewed a therapist and we were talking about the relationship between like, let's say feeling like you're addicted to food or feeling like you're out of control with money. And actually Janine Roth wrote a book about that also, I think.
Did she?
I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Because I'm pretty sure she's the one that like lost all of her money to Madoff. And she writes a book about it. And like maybe I don't remember because I actually didn't finish it because like I wasn't super interested in the book, but like somebody recommended it. And like, usually like if I can't finish a book, I just stop reading it. I'm not like forcing myself to read it. That's an intuitive thing, but.
Can I take a detour and just tell you about that for a second?
Yes,
that is something I learned as an adult, that you can, if you don't want to finish reading a book, you don't have to, you could just stop at page 147 and there's 100 more pages. And like, that is a thing, like it just, why would, it's like saying like stopping a movie halfway through, like why would you do that?
Right. But you can.
Turns out you just can.
Yeah, it turns out that you just can. Well, it's actually really funny because like so going back to this, a lot of people are always like, you read that book? Like how did you read it? I'm like, what do you mean? Shabbos afternoon, I spent 4 hours. Like, I just read such a good book this year called Group. It's not like super appropriate, but it was a really good book. Did you read it?
I've heard of it. It's on my list of books to read.
So I read it in one Shabbos, like in literally one Shabbos. And I realized that like I happen to like, I really like educational books. Like I love to read like psychology books, but like sometimes they get really boring, you know? So like on the one hand, like you want to have the knowledge, but on the other hand, like it can be really boring. So I like those books that are like, there's some education in there, but there's like storytelling. Who doesn't like
Yeah.
storytelling, you know? So like I took out all these books from the library and I'm like, I can't read it. Like it's too boring.
Yes, I think that that is the question. How do you read? Either you want to read or you don't want to, or
Right.
reading is the medium with a book, or it's listening to audio books or podcasts or whatever it is. I think, yeah, if your person wants to, there are ways to figure out. I know someone, have a client, the only time she reads is when she's on the toilet, because that's the only time she gets any privacy or
That
space or
makes
quiet.
sense.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so like
Yeah.
you do you, like that's,
Yeah. Yeah.
if
That
that
makes
works,
sense.
it works. Mhm.
Right. Actually, as a side note, another detour, like I happen to love listening to audiobooks, which is really, really funny because I used to commute to Brooklyn and I like hated it. It was horrible, but the whole thing was horrible. But I started going to the library to get books for shops, whatever. Then I'm like, audiobooks. I started listening to audiobooks in the car. And I was telling my dad, and he's like, yeah, I've been listening to audiobooks. Like, it's a genetic thing. Like, he listens to audiobooks, I listen to
What?
audiobooks. Yeah. And then I realized, just for the listeners, which I mentioned this a lot of times, there's something called the Libby app. And it's a free app from your library. You just plug in your library card and you could listen to audiobooks through the Libby app. And I'm not I do like to read, but I'm not like, I much prefer to listen, like when I do the dishes or like when I go bike riding in the car. And I consumed so many books and podcasts and content because I love to listen. I like the gift I bought myself this year was like a Bluetooth, and like my kids are around and I'm like, like listening as I'm doing the dishes. Like I can multitask, but it's just, I love it.
So Zig Ziglar, the motivational speaker author, he has a saying that he's the car. Well, hold on, I forget what it's going to be. I'm like totally blanking on the phrase. I was so excited to tell you this.
Take your time.
He, I don't remember what it's called, but he has a phrase for like your time in the car or commuting is like essentially like car university, meaning you can learn anything you want to learn
So
for
true.
free or almost free,
Yeah.
which is so cool. And it's funny that you say that audiobooks is genetic. That just, my husband loves audiobooks. His mother loves audiobooks.
Yeah.
I do not like audiobooks.
See?
No one in my family likes audiobooks.
Right.
So I was not aware about the audiobooks, Jean.
Yeah. And I also think like when people are like, oh, I can't listen to a book, I'm like, why not? Like just listen to it. It's so much better. They're like, no, I'd rather like I have a friend who like she likes quiet. Like she's like, yeah, just like no music, no nothing. I'm like, what? Like literally, I don't know, maybe it's like a problem with me, but like when I'm in the car and I'm just like driving, I'm like 1 minute and I'm like, I need to hear music or listen to something. Like that's just the way my brain works. Actually, I actually do think I have some form of ADD. Like I was never like a good student. And like my brain just works like, I don't know. Like I listen to my audiobooks on double speed. Like I could listen and listen and listen all day, but like for like maybe that's why school was hard for me because like teachers talk so slow.
They only talk on one speed or like 0.75.
Right.
That is something I learned also this year. That was one of my COVID discoveries. You can listen to YouTube videos and Spotify on, you can choose the speed, which has been a game changer because yes. So I think that people can't listen, either need to be with music, either because they need some sort of other just external stimulation to do, they can do whatever they're doing. And some people just can't be alone with their thoughts. So I'm not suggesting one is you or the other, but that's like the, or both, right?
I'm pretty sure, yeah, I'm definitely
just
both, but I also have a lot of thoughts. So like, so yeah,
right.
it's a lot.
Yes.
Okay, so tell us like a little bit more about how intuitive eating has changed your life or changed the way that you think about your body, yourself, your eating.
It's entirely given a new frame of how I think about the voice in my head and the voices in our heads, because we're so, especially as professionals, especially, oh my gosh, those of us who are in the helping field are so good at being so gentle and so compassionate with other people. And when they binge eat again, we're like, okay, like so you did it again. So, but with ourselves, we have a much harsher voice in our own heads. And this is true about everyone. And just because, so I know so many people in the helping women in the helping field, it's just rampant. So I think the intuitive eating, the voice, learning to just retool the voice in my head that talks to me about what I look like and what I should look like and what I eat and what I should eat. It's just become a much more gentle experience. So that's not anytime. My goal is that right when I mess up or I don't achieve my own standards in other parts of my life, that it's the same, okay,
Right.
turning in. Like
Right.
that's just a
Right.
much less harsh an experience. And I think that I really, I have a 3-year-old daughter, and was like, this is something that we're doing, like from the beginning, it's going to be intuitive eating, division of responsibility. Like and my husband, who had never heard of any of the things, was like, okay, like whatever, this seems like something you're passionate about, like you go right ahead. And I will never forget. So when my daughter was 2, it was last year Pesach. So she was only 2 years old. And I've been doing putting everything on the plate, and if there's dessert, to put it just together with. So it was on Pesach last year, so COVID Pesach. So there's no one else around. I put everything on the plate, and she grabbed the macaroon because that was the closest thing we had to dessert. And then she put it back. Like it was her instinct to like get that, and then like she put it back to like pick up her cucumbers or whatever it was. And I saw it happen in slow motion, which was pretty cool. And
Very
just to
cool.
be able to see that like fall into place, it was like that, like I did it. Like that was able to see just that how I've changed the generational narrative. Was just like an unbelievable thing to just see that in real time with someone who was so young.
Yeah.
So that's something that's very like, that's just a way that I see it reverberate in my life. It's not just me, it's the way that I am treating the people around me and the way that my family is growing up.
Right. Wow. Yeah. I mean, a lot of people say this, but like intuitive eating spills over into intuitive living. So the 10 principles can be applied to like I probably said this before on the podcast, but like when I was doing intuitive eating and learning the principles, I remember thinking like, can I make peace with money? Like, cause I was also struggling. I'm an underspender, like majorly underspender, like really struggle with that. So I was like, could I make peace with like unconditional spending? Not like spending all of our money, but like it was hard for me to buy things that we needed, like I would hem and haw check every single price, like, and that's like
Right.
to an extent like obsessive, so like I remember thinking like, wow, I'm going to really try this. And it was really, really, really hard. Like it was really challenging, but it was also like super liberating to like get to the other side, So like,
Wow.
yeah. So I say that all the time. And like you were saying before about like the sleep a little bit, like the holistic approach, like there's 10 principles of intuitive eating. Nutrition is one of them and exercise is one of them, but like health and wellness and a person's well-being is like such a big picture. Like there's so many components and you can't really separate a person into like one component. It doesn't work like that.
Right. And the fact they've done a lot of research on how when a person starts to change one habit, suddenly their whole life is just uplifted, and there's just other habits they start changing without even really thinking about them, because once you start shifting one area, the momentum and the excitement about what you're doing really just spills over to other areas, and just life gets better.
Right. I guess it's also like you notice like the common themes in your life or the common struggles in your life. So like when you find almost like something that helps you in one area, a lot of times it will help you in another area. You could learn to like apply that.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So is there anything else you want to like leave the listeners with? I kind of want to hear a little bit more about your practice. Like if there's like something that like a common theme that you see, or something that even maybe you could give us as women, tips as women to like care for ourselves.
Absolutely. So, like I said, just my focus in the private practice is maternal mental health. So I've done a lot of training on just what that means and how it is. So I think that just, one thing is really wonderful, that there is beginning to be much more education and much more awareness of how something like postpartum psychosis is much more common than we think. Postpartum depression and anxiety, which take a lot of different forms. A stillbirth, miscarriage, infertility, so many different reproductive anomalies. There's so many things, and I think it's becoming more common in the Jewish community. I think that it's about 15 to 18% of Jewish couples are dealing with infertility, dealing with perinatal health, mental health. Wow. So it's a pretty big section of people.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that I've learned is just women are so extraordinarily strong and fragile at the same time. And there's so many things that in ways in which people are tested, and so many challenges in which people are given, and the capacity to work down what you just said. Sorry. And to overcome is just really, it blows my mind every time I think about it.
It's so true. It's so true. It's so true. But it's actually interesting though, because like one of my like main points on the podcast is like self-care, right? But not like the like annoying, like I want to throw up if I hear the words self-care again. Like that type of self-care, but like really like self-parenting, self-love, but like you were talking about before, like knowing yourself, like understanding like what your needs are and meeting those needs, like on such a deep level, like making self-care plans, or like listening to what our instincts are, saying no when we need to say no, not people pleasing. And like we are really strong, right? But like part of our strength is also, I believe, is like saying like that's too much for me, I can't do that. I think people really need to hear that, and like hear that over and over again, because I feel like there is this notion in our community that like I could do anything. I could make pizza. Pizza is traumatic for me. Oh my gosh. Like it's
Right.
really, like it's like we
Yeah.
are strong, but like part of our strength is to say like I'm not able to do that, and that's okay.
I'm really glad you said that, because I think that I need to define the word strong, which is something that I also just, we need to define the word strong. Strong does not mean capacity to handle anything without getting bothered, without crying, without having any feelings. It means the capacity to sit with difficult emotions, the capacity to live through unimaginable pain, the capacity to just exist, and to, on one hand, while mourning a miscarriage that's in the middle of happening, to be able to cook a meal for a friend who just had a baby, or to dance at a simple. What strong doesn't mean capacity to do and do and do. It means
Mm.
capacity just to live with and to deal with huge challenges.
Well, and I would just say that also, like like what you're doing is extremely strong, because like you're voluntarily sitting with other people in that unimaginable pain, and that's really, really challenging.
It can be, and that's really about having my own network and of people that I can rely on, and people that I can, my own boundaries and ways to take care of myself. It doesn't, that cup, that the gas meter also right now gets low, so there has to be ways to fill up, or to fill up ourselves. So I think that I'm going to echo what you're saying about self-care, and that it does not mean, I mean, listen, if a person likes bubble baths, call out kavod, but it doesn't mean bubble
I like
baths
bubble
means
bath.
like,
Yeah.
oh, I'm so happy. But that's not what self-care means. It's one fraction of an element of what self-care really means. And it's self-care
Right.
means, I think I read an article on self-care means like making your bed sometimes. And
Right.
it means
Right.
like having hard conversations. And it means
Right.
doing things you don't
Right.
want to do.
So true. It's so true. I'm just
And
thinking
also
like,
bubble baths.
and also bubble bath, but you're like, I don't know, we could go in so many directions with this episode, but I'm just thinking like today, like just because today's today, like I was like sitting down, like I think I only had one client during the day, and the other days I'm busy, like busier with like actual clients. I was like, okay, today I'll do some content creation, I'll like post on Instagram. And I was just like so sad about what happened to Mayroon, and like that's not just the only sad thing that happened. Like there's been so many tragedies, and I was thinking like I need to post, like the algorithm, that was the thought in my head. And I was like, no, I really don't need to post. Like, I really need to leave my house right now. And I was like, the voice in my head is telling me like you should be working. But I was like, I'm actually gonna go for a bike ride, and I'm gonna listen to like a really sad podcast. And it was really, really, really good and moving, and it matched my mood. Like I wasn't like, I don't want to listen to like upbeat music. I need to be like in this feeling. And like it didn't, like I still yelled at my kids in the afternoon, and I still had a hard time. Like I was still having a hard time, but I was thinking like I was drawing from that, like that those moments where I was actually able to like listen to myself. And yeah, I didn't listen to myself the whole day. Like there were times where I was like going crazy, like I just want to say that like there were still some really hard moments in the afternoon, but like I felt like that was like real self-care. Like even like the thoughts in my head are like, really, you're gonna go for a bike ride on a Monday afternoon? Like you should really be working. And I'm like, yeah, but this is like I'm able to do this right now, so I'm gonna do it. And I did it. And I was really
And
happy.
it is part of your work. I think it's
Yeah.
part of your work of life, not just your work of income, of career. And I think it takes incredible strength of mind and of presence for you to be able to say that on a podcast that's being recorded, where you're going to now put this on the internet, and
Right.
to be able to say all these things that I yelled at my kids and I didn't do so well here, but I did well here. To be able to really have that perspective that is also some pretty impressive strength.
Right. Right. And since we're talking about that, I'll just say that I took Sima Spetner's parenting class, which was like incredible. I probably said that also. And like
Mm-hmm.
I actually, you could pay a certain amount of money and like do unlimited emailing, right? So I'm sending her questions about my kids, whatever, and she's like, "Wow, you are so hard on yourself." Like that was like the first email, like our first email string, and I was like, "Wow, like this woman doesn't know me from a hole in the wall." Like I just took her course and emailed her, and I'm like, exactly what you just said before. Like I didn't notice, like I don't notice how hard I am on myself, like
Right.
until you said that, or like whatever. It was just very eye-opening. Like she says, like she just so because it was so powerful to me. So I'm just going to share it here. She says, like, part of life is fail and fix, fail and fix, fail and fix. And the only time that you really mess up, like, is when you give up for good. So like if you screamed at your kids at 4 o'clock, you have 4:15 and 4:30 and 4:45 and 5. And I did have all those extra. And you know what? I was really overwhelmed. I was hiding in my room for a little, and I took them to the library. So like it was really hard. It was really challenging. But like the more that we like, stay in that guilt or shame or whatever it is, like we're in such a worse place. Like we have to
Right.
like almost like be like, I don't know. I'm thinking about like sitting in other people's pain, but we have to like sit in our own pain, like sit in our own feelings and be like, yeah, that was painful. And like, now I'm going to move past it,
And I think in general, with positive and negative, one does not negate the other, right? You yelled at your kids and they felt sad or however they felt. And also you were a great mom and took them to the library. So that they don't negate each other. It doesn't cancel
Right.
each other out. They're both
Right.
part of the experience. And I also, want to hit, just because I know that you've shared about your mom, you've written about her and you've spoken about her before, that we also hold ourselves up to our role models. And your mom
Right.
was an extraordinary woman.
Yeah.
So like, there's just so much in there just with our role models and how we see ourselves and that voice in our head and who we have to turn to, who we no longer have to turn to.
Right.
It's a lot of stuff that we could talk for forever about.
Yeah.
This.
Right. And also like the fact that you said like I think you said like clinicians or helping professionals, right? Like we are able to like give someone else compassion, but then we have like such a strong like negative self-talk in our head. And I was just thinking, I heard like a few years ago, I heard somebody talking about like the fear of success. I think it was Bariana on her podcast. And I was thinking, like, what is she talking about? Like, what's there to be afraid of, And like I had this moment a little bit like before Pesach, like I was like, I worked really, really hard on building my business. And like, there were moments where I was like, I'm done. Like it's really hard to get clients. Everybody wants weight loss. I don't know what I'm doing. I didn't go to school to be a businesswoman, like just really wanted to give up. And like, now, like when people reach out to me, I'm like, I have like almost like anxiety. Like, why are they like that imposter syndrome? And I'm like, I can't believe this is happening to me. Like you think, like you look at someone else who you feel is like more successful than you, like 5 years ahead of you or whatever. And you're like, what are they talking about? But like, it really does get hard. Like it really, we see ourselves in such a different light. Like you think like that wouldn't be an issue. Like I'm doing exactly what I want to do. But like, sometimes that voice gets even stronger, like that negative voice,
Yeah. So cool. Our heads are so cool.
Yeah, they are really cool. So are you taking new clients?
Yes, I am taking new clients. I can be reached. My email address is srabinowitzcounseling@gmail.com. If there's like notes or whatever, I can give that to you. Yeah, you can reach for a lot of different things, consultation, sessions.
Awesome.
Oh,
Okay.
let's talk.
Yeah. And I'll put
Send me
all
your
that in.
book suggestions. Eddie,
Yeah.
happy to get book suggestions from anyone. But yeah,
Oh yeah,
feel free
for
to reach
sure.
out.
Book club. We could start
Easy to
another
reach.
book club.
Yes, so many book clubs. There's none there.
Okay, so I'm going to put all of that information in the show notes, and then hopefully people will reach out. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's been such a pleasure to be here. Thank you so much for having me, Gila. I'm a big fan of yours, and I can't wait to see everything that you're going to continue to do, because you deserve success in all the ways.
Wow. I mean, thank you so much.